guys, welcome to my channel. I am Megan, and I've been getting quite a few questions from beginners and people who have never seen acrylic pouring and have lots and lots of questions on how to get started and what to do and what they need and all of that. So I thought I'd start a beginner's series. And this is the first episode in the beginner's series where I'm going to go over the very basics and then do a quick flip cup. So this is basically, because I've had some people have never seen this art form before, this style of painting. This is what I've done. I'm going to use this canvas today to pour over, just to show you how easy it is to pour over if you have one you don't like, which is going to happen, especially at the beginning. But this is one I did quite a while ago, and I'm not crazy about it. There's some things I could do to it after the fact, which is fun also to kind of make it nice. But I wanted to use this canvas also because this is an 8x10, and if you're just getting started, an 8x10 is a really great size of canvas to start pouring on, because it's big enough that you can tilt and do some of the fun effects. It's not too small, you know, that you're not really doing much because the canvas is so small, but it's not so big that you're having to stretch the paint with a lot of tilting to get it to move around. And it's just, I find it's a really easy size to work with. So that's my personal recommendation if you're just starting out. I've had some questions on cells, and actually some people who have never seen it, acrylic pouring, and ooh, I just lost the thumbtack, and weren't quite sure even what they were or how to achieve them. So real quick, basically these little areas right here where you see different colors poking through, those are cells, and a lot of people try to get them in pouring. It's not the only effect, and actually you get some really pretty looks in with different techniques with no cells. This is a bottle bottom swirl. But anyway, it's a very popular look right now, and a lot of people are trying to achieve it. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But basically, I use silicone, spot-on treadmill belt lubricant in my paint to help produce the cells. You can without the silicone. But what the silicone does is it repels the water in the paint, since we're using water-based paint with acrylics. And then these... you have layers of paint, and then it kind of separates, and the colors that are under the top layer kind of poke through. And it gives a really neat look. And you will need a specific consistency to your paint to get those too thick, and they won't appear, and too thin, they'll kind of just turn into nothing. So that's what we're going to talk about today. If you want to do more of a swirl without cells, I'll do that in my next video to show how you do a consistency if you don't want cells. So for a paint mix, these are the colors I'm using today, and then I'll show how to mix one. And these are already mixed. But I'm going to go ahead and mix a craft paint. You can also use more of an artist's grade paint. Once you have the consistency of your paint down, and your additives and how you want to mix it, you can play around with brands, and it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference. There are a couple of brands that I've noticed that react a little bit differently, but for any effect you're trying to achieve, consistency, additives, those are really the keys to getting consistent results. So I'm using a craft paint. Craft paints are typically a little bit thinner than your artist grade. Arteza is a great paint. It's more of a heavy body paint, so it takes a little bit more water, a little bit more mixing than craft paint. I'm going to use a little bit more of this. This is just Deco Art Bluegrass Green, which is a really pretty color. I also have a mixing video that shows me mixing a craft paint and a thicker paint. So if you're interested in kind of a slower mixing video, you can check that out. I'll link to it below. I mix my paint with Flood Floetrol, and I'm going to recommend, there's lots of options for pouring mediums. Deco Art has a pouring medium, Nova Color has a medium, Liquitex has Liquitex pouring medium, Golden has their GAC line, and I think it's 800 that you use for pouring. Personally, I'm going to recommend Floetrol if you're starting out, just because I find it is easier to work with. I've worked with pretty much all of them. You can use a lot, you can use a little, and you're still going to get the same results. If I want to stretch a paint color that I don't have very much of, I know I can use quite a bit of Floetrol and it's still going to react the same. Or if I just want a little tiny bit, I get consistent results. I can't say the same about other mediums I've used that kind of require a little bit more consistent mixing. So if you would rather use a artist grade medium, Liquitex Basics Matte Fluid Medium is a lot like Floetrol as far as consistency goes. I really, really love it, and when I have it on hand, I happen to be out of it. I sometimes use a 50-50 mix just because Floetrol is a little cheaper than the Basics Matte Medium. You can see this was $9.99 at Hobby Lobby. I'm sure I used a coupon for 8.79 ounces, and I think this is like $7 for a quart. But this is great as well if you want to stick to the artist grade materials. Okay, popsicle stick. These are condiment cups. Actually, I think they're called snack cups. Let me see. Yeah, they're called snack cups from Walmart. And the great thing is, when you're done, do I have one that's dry? I'm sure I do. The paint just peels right out. Like that, and you can use them over and over and over and over and over, so no tossing of cups. Okay, so I'm going to use a 1-to-1 just about ratio of Floetrol and paint. Quick Floetrol tip here, guys. Every now and then you'll get one. I've only had one in all the time I've been doing this, but you can get one that has some like dried bits in it, like boogery bits. And if that happens, you can just get like a fine mesh strainer and pour it through there. I've had one that came like that when I bought it, and then I had one, a big gallon that had very little in it, and I think what happened was the sides, you know, I'd pour and then it would slide down the sides, and I think it would start to dry on the sides, and then those dried bits would get mixed in and caused kind of boogery bits. And you always want to shake your Floetrol because it does separate. Okay, so this was maybe a bit more than 1-to-1 paint Floetrol, but like I said, that's why I love Floetrol. I'm just going to mix. And then I'm going to test, before I do anything else, I'm going to test my consistency. I'm going to come as close to the camera as I can without making a mess. Let's not drip in any of these. That would be lovely. Okay. So I'm going to test real quick. Even if it's spot on, which almost never happens, sometimes the metallic craft paints are really thin, so they're pretty much ready. I always add just a teensy little drop of water. It just, I find that teensy bit of just water helps. Okay, so this is how I test my paint. Call it the custard test. I'm going to run my finger through it on the stick. See if it can focus. There we go. You can see the line where my finger went right there, and the paint is not running back. It left a perfect mark where my finger was. That means it's too thick if you want cells. So we're going to add a little bit of water. I just keep my water in a little condiment squirt bottle. It's easy to just get a little bit. And just a little bit at a time. You'll get a feel for it to where you won't have to run your finger through it every time. I do every now and then anyway, just to keep myself, you know, just kind of check on myself, because, you know, you get to a point where you get too sure yourself. Plus, I use a couple different mixes when I don't want cells, or I'm doing a swirl. I use a thicker mix, so I always, when I go back to a thinner mix, I always want to double check so I'm not going too thin. Okay, so I hope this will focus. Let me try this again. I'm going to run my finger through it. Boop. There you can see that mark still. It's getting there though, so add a little bit more water. What I'm looking for when I run my finger through it, I want the paint to start running back towards the center where I ran my finger through, but not completely do away with that mark. If I run my finger through it and then there's, you know, it all runs back together completely, it's too thin. If it doesn't move at all, it's too thick. I call it like a runny custard. If you've ever made a custard when you're on the stove and you look for that where you run your finger through it and it doesn't move, that's too thick for this. So I call it kind of a runny custard. Okay. Whoops. I know this is hard to see. Okay. Ah! I'm dripping all over my hand here, guys. Okay, so run my finger through it. Is that too, did I get a little too thin? There we go. This is really hard to do on camera. Okay, so I'm gonna run my finger through it. And you can see a little bit of a divot there. My other video, I got it to focus a little bit better. Ah, sorry guys. Okay, focus, camera. There, you can sort of see the line there. Can you sort of see it? It's holding its shape just a little bit. This is on the thin side. I wouldn't want it any thinner. A little thicker would be okay. Any thinner would be too thin. There we go. Let me try. Let's see. Yeah, I have it all over my fingers. I don't want to go into my other colors. I got it to focus for some reason a little bit better on my mixing video, so you can pop over there. But basically, like I said, you're looking for the paint to sort of move back on itself a little bit, but not totally, you don't want your line to totally disappear. And you can tell, I'll give you some tips. You can tell when it's too thin or too thick just by pouring it in your, when you start pouring them in your cup together. You can already tell if it's too thin or too thick. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to add, probably for this much, I'm going to add 2 drops of silicone. To get the cells. Okay, and I did not add any, I mixed this. This is our Phthalo Blue. You know what, it looks like I did add it. Add 1 drop just in case. A little silicone goes a long way. You do not want to add more than a couple drops. A little goes a very long way. Okay, so here are my colors. I have, whoops, there you go. I have an 8x10 canvas, and what I do, I go to artresin.com, and ArtResin has a resin calculator on the very bottom of their homepage. And it's a calculator to tell you how much resin you need if you're going to cover a piece. For pouring, you want to multiply that times 1.5 or close to double it, because if you just barely have enough to cover the surface or just enough to cover the surface of your canvas, you are not going to get cells, because it's going to have to spread out so much just to cover the canvas that you won't get the interactions. You really need kind of like, not like thick layers, but you need the colors to kind of float on top of each other to create the cells. And I've done that plenty of times where I've just had enough paint, and it, not that it can't be pretty, but if you're looking for cells, you will not get that. So the resin calculator for this said 3 ounces. These cups are 5-ounce cups, so I know if I fill one of these up, I'll probably be good. Let's zoom in just a little bit. I'm going to do a flip cup, and a flip cup is where you take your cup and you put it on your, you put your canvas upside down and you flip, and then you let the cup go and it goes. And that's a great way to start out for cells, because it kind of causes turbulence in the paint and helps the cells form also. The more you can kind of get your paint to interact and kind of move around, the better chances you have at getting cells. I'm going to put this painting away before I splash paint on it. But there's also swipes where you swipe paint over top of each other. There's swirls. I will get into those on my future videos. I will do a swirl next just because that's a different paint mixture, different thickness. And I wanna show that to you guys next time. Also, I'll link, Bakerboo has a mixing video also that is excellent. So I'm gonna link that in the description bar as well, so you can check out hers. Sometimes watching a couple good ones gives you a better idea. Okay. So here is my 5-ounce cup. I'm just going to fill it. I do have a little bit of white. Now, titanium white is the thickest. This is probably going to totally disappear. I'm sorry, the heaviest paints. So it tends to sink. Okay, a little bit of white. Well, let's just use it all. I am completely out of white. This is last, my white. Okay, let's layer our colors. This gold. So pretty. Let's do some gold. This is rose gold. I can't remember the brand. This is a craft rose gold. The gold was Arteza, is Arteza. This is Arteza's Phthalo Blue. Okay, this one is a little bit thicker, and I did test it, and it's within the range. But I kind of want to show you, well, let's put one more color in. Okay, before that sinks. Ah! Okay, so if you're getting, the way that almost looked before it started sinking, and it's fine that it's sinking, except it makes it harder to explain. But you see how the paints are kind of doing their own thing in the cup. The green is sinking, they're kind of interacting. You can see the edges of the blue, I think. There we go, kind of bleeding in almost. And it's kind of going all wonky. If you have rings that look like perfect little tree rings of paint that aren't going wobbly at all, and you're pouring and they just look like tree rings on top of each other, and nothing is sinking and every color you're putting on top is staying on top, your paint is too thick. If it's not interacting at all in the cup and it's too thick, it's not going to interact at all on the canvas, and you're not going to get cells if that's what you're looking for. So that's a great hint that your mix is too thick. Now, if they're all sinking to the bottom, you're pouring, they're just sinking, and you're already starting to see a little bit of like mud where they're all kind of turning into one color, your paint is too thin. So just by pouring it together in a cup, you can sort of quality control, I guess, and make sure that your paints are the right thickness. And that's kind of nice because, they're already in your cup. So, you have used some of it, but before you use all of your paint that you mixed, you could tell. See that one before it starts to sink, or maybe that one's going to float a little bit. If they all look like that, perfect round on top of each other, your paint is too thick. And this one is definitely not too thick. It's just floating on top of the blue. Put a little bit more in there. Okay. Here's my green. There you go. And the green's going to sink, and this blue will probably start to sink. Phthalo Blue takes over. That was probably more Phthalo Blue than I wanted, because it tends to take over. More of that rose gold. I want to basically fill up this cup. And there you can almost see a little bit of a tree ring. If that's all you're getting when you first start pouring, your paint is too thick. It's okay that it's doing it now. I'm almost done. Okay, finish up with some gold. And we saw that they really were interacting and some were sinking. And I've got my cup, and this is almost full, so this is about 5 ounces. And since Art Resin told me 3 ounces for 8 by 10, pretty good. I'm going to add a little phthalo blue to the corners just to make it easier. So this is just, I haven't done anything to this. This is just a previously poured canvas. Haven't prepared it in any way, and it will be just fine. So what I'm going to do is flip it over. I have push pins in the back of my canvas just so it'll sit up from the surface. And I have freezer paper covering my surface. So I can either just peel the paint off or when it gets too messy, change the freezer paper. You just want to make sure it's level. This one is just something's not quite right here. You just want to make sure it's level. Which this is all of a sudden not. I checked it. But one of my push pins fell out. Alright, we're going to go with it for the sake of speed. But, okay, so my flip cup, I'm going to pick my canvas up. And then we're going to go, see I've got my cup under here. I'm going to go flip. And there's my flip cup. Now, you have a couple options once you've flipped your flip cup. You can just lift it. You can put, if you want some negative space, like this was a flip cup here, don't want to get paint on it. And what I did with this one is after I was at this point, my cup was right here, and I covered my canvas with white paint so that my flip cup kind of spread into the white paint as I tilted and gave it some negative space. Even if you want to cover the whole surface, that's an option. What I'm going to do, because for one, I'm out of white paint, and I have quite a bit of paint in here. To help the paint spread after I lift the cup, I'm going to put some Floetrol down. Now this does not work with the Deco Art pouring medium. It separates a little bit and reacts kind of strangely. So if you have that, definitely use white paint. Let me shake this again real quick. But all this does is helps the paint flow. It's not going to, you know, we're not going to worry about what it's doing to the paint. It's not going to do anything. However, if you have like a black canvas or a canvas that's painted, that you've painted like a dark color or something, what you can do with the Floetrol is spread it around. And then if you don't get your entire canvas covered and the paint, you know, like spreads into the Floetrol, it kind of spreads into it in a really pretty way. You don't even have to cover your entire canvas, and you can leave little bits of the Floetrol and it will dry. Floetrol dries completely clear, so it'll just look like you can see the bits of the canvas. It doesn't have to be dark. I was just thinking in my head that would be pretty. Or you can paint your canvas white. Do that, and then you'd have some negative space that way. Alright, let me get my washcloth, wipe my hands off. You can definitely wear gloves for this. I do sometimes. Some of the paints, Nova Color paint in particular, really is hard to get off my hands, so I try to always wear gloves when I'm using Nova Color. Okay. Get all that out of the way. So I'm going to get my corners. Now, one little tip that I forgot to say, if you cover your canvas with one color, it doesn't have to be white, but let's say you take white and you cover your canvas and you want some negative space, do not put silicone in that base color because it may start to pull away from the canvas. You want the silicone in there to react with the other paint, but it makes it harder to get a nice smooth finish if you're using it just to cover part of the canvas. So I'm going to put some, there we go. I'm just going to cover kind of the corners so it makes it a little easier. And you'll be able to see here, see we're getting cells because this has, you know, if you want a large area of negative space, you obviously don't want that. Okay, ready? This is the fun bit. Whoop. And then you can see the cells already forming. Now I'm going to take my torch. You can use a little culinary torch. You can use a little fireplace lighter. I sent my husband, so he got me a big one. But you do not need a big torch. And I'm just going to go over it. The difference between torching it now and torching it after I'm done tilting, is that if you torch now, your cells as you tilt, as you tilt, your cells will get a little bit bigger and expand. If you like the little cells, then by all means tilt and then torch, and they will stay small. The other thing is, if you torch now, they can sometimes get a little wonky, and they won't stay a pretty round shape because you're tilting. So, you know, just whatever floats your boat as far as that goes. Where's my little piece of cardboard? Did I have my little piece? Okay, so you can get cardboard and just kind of hold it at the corners to keep your paint from sliding off. Let me pause this and find one real quick. Okay, it was hiding from me. So take some cardboard. You don't have to do this. This is just an optional step. That way your paint will not slide off. I'm getting some pretty... Ooh, I like that. We're going to just tilt to cover. Okay. Actually, try not to drop it because it does get a little bit slippery. Okay. And there you go. That's all there is to it. I actually like that one. Sometimes I like to fiddle after I've done a flip cup, and you know, if it's not quite exactly what I like, but I like this one. It's not going to require any fiddling. The cells got a little bit wonky, but not in a weird way, kind of in a pretty way, and we have actually quite a bit of the colors showing, so I'm happy with that. We'll do some close-ups here real quick. Some more cells are popping up as we sit. And then you can just go around and use the part that kind of dripped off to make sure all your sides are covered. Actually, this one did pretty well. The cardboard, I find, also helps as you're moving it around. Make sure your sides get covered. And then this part right here, where it's... Let me move this carefully. Where there's runoff, you see right here? Wipe my hands off. What you can do with that is peel it up, and then it makes really pretty jewelry. And get the pendants and just peel it up. Really pretty. Okay. So that's all there is to it. Let's do some close-ups though. See the metallics, if I can get my phone to focus, in there. Really, really pretty. That phthalo blue peeking over. I'm really happy it didn't like totally take over. Phthalo blue can be a stage hog and just totally take over. Got some little cells in with the big cells there, so I'm quite happy actually with this one. If you have any questions, if I didn't make things clear, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. I will answer them below, but I'm also going to be doing several of these beginner series, so I can address them in future videos. As I said, the next video, I'll be doing a swirl without cells. And that's a little bit different of a mix, so be sure to watch that if you're interested in how to do that technique, and any other techniques you're interested in seeing slowed down a little bit compared to the videos that don't really do tutorials, they're just kind of showing. Let me know what techniques those are, or any additional questions, and I will answer them in future videos. And we will see you next time, guys. Happy pouring!